can influence the inventory. Now we're going to be mainly focused on the costing aspect. Okay, so again, yes, we understand that the cost of the there are the three methods, right? We got FIFO, we got LIFO, and we got weighted average. Now that's periodic. In perpetual terms, it's moving average. Okay. Now again, the example stays the same, but however, the way that we look into it is going to be the way, since we have to factor in our cost of goods sold, we're going to be constantly updating our inventory, and this is how you do the first in, first out. Now, mind you, this example here is going to look a little different, and what I did is I color coded it so it makes sense, okay? Now, you guys do have the option as you progress, and I will go ahead and do this with you guys. We're going to start off with this method where we highlight our groups, right? We color code them, and we slowly see how each transaction goes through and how we take from those batches, okay? And then as we get better on and so on so forth, you no longer, if you think color coding is not something that that really helps you and you can keep track of it yourself, then you may do so like that as well. And we will go ahead and look at this example again when we're looking at our fictitious business. So in this case, I'm just showing you as if you've never seen perpetual inventory at all, and you're trying to understand how to get there, all right? And I'll explain when we actually get there. So again, we're going to be looking at the same exact things here, except we have a cost per item and we have a cost of goods sold, all right? Now, it's not going to apply as so much as this, but it is going to do quantity times cost per item to get your total cost of goods sold. Now, we don't need to have ending inventory because why? We already know how much ending inventory is, but for safekeepings, it's also good to make sure that we have that on the side. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at our scenario first, and then we'll dive into the concept. So here, for the following items, journalize the transaction, can assume that sales tax is 8.25%. So here we have a list of all of our transactions. On June 1st, we made a purchase of 100 toys, okay? On June 3rd, you sold 55 toys, okay? And then on June 5th, we made another purchase of 100 toys. And then June 10th, we made another purchase of 100 toys. And then June 12th, we sold 120. And at the end of June 15, we have a total of 125 toys. Now, of course, every slide is going to be broken down, and I'm going to have the scenario broken down as well. But we just want to make sure that when we're looking at this, we know that we have here, we have a purchase. We sold something. Then we have another purchase, and then we sold something. So, with all of these being said and listed out, you're going to take a look at every single transaction, and it will affect how the inventory is updating. So our first example here is going to be June 1st. We made a purchase of 100 toys at $1.25 each. Freight was $25. So in this case, boom, I've already journalized it and solved it for you. We're taking it and putting it straight into inventory. And second thing is it's going to be for accounts payable because we put it on account, right? So we're going to go take a look at our inventory worksheet here. Now, this, because the PowerPoint is super small, we're actually missing 3 more columns, which is going to be your inventory on hand. And when we actually dive into the exercise, I'll go ahead and talk about that section tomorrow, okay? But in this case, I just want you to show you the transaction at hand. So we recognize June 1st, right? We recognize that we made purchases. So if we look at our table carefully, our first 4 columns is going to be dealing with our cost of goods sold. All right. Then the next 6 columns is going to be dealing with our inventory. Okay. So this is where we do our purchases right here. Okay. And then lastly, the last 3 columns, which we'll talk about tomorrow, is going to be your inventory on hand. Okay. And that is what the table looks like. Nothing else. There's no section at the bottom for you to calculate your ending inventory and your cost of goods sold. There's no workspace and there's no returns and allowances. That's it. This is exactly what the table looks like. It's a total of 9 columns, and they're just divided into 3 sections. So in this case, we made our purchases, so we're going to focus on the middle section. We have 100 toys. We bought them at $1.25, and freight was $25. So my total cost is going to be $125. I'm sorry. Total cost is going to be $125. And here, that's actually supposed to be purchase price. My total cost is actually going to be $150. And then my unit per cost is going to be $1.50 for each item. Now, again, because I'm going to be dealing with 3 batches, right? We solved the scenario. We have a total of 3 batches. I'm going to go ahead and select a random color. I'm going to use yellow. Okay, that's going to indicate that this is my first batch, right? Okay. Everyone with me so far? All right. So the next scenario says that on June 3rd, we sold 55 toys for $5 each. Now remember, we're dealing with perpetual sales. So in this case here, we journalize that we have cash, we got sales and sales tax payable. And then lastly, we need to enter in our cost of goods sold, which is going to be the amount that we're selling them items for. In this case, I've already pre-calculated this, but where did I get these answers? And you will see on the next slide. So here, I recognize that I made a sale. How many items I sold? I sold it for 55. I sold 55 items. Now, what did it cost me to sell those 55 items? And here, we're going to take it from this top here, where it's going to be our unit cost. So in this case, it cost me $1.20. It cost me $1.50 to sell this item. So that's where I'm going to transfer into this little column here for $1.50. And then we're going to find our total cost by multiplying across. So 55 times $1.50. Anyone want to help me calculate here? $82.50 is correct. All right. Now, we solved for what we solved the cost of goods sold, right? And that was exactly what we had on the previous page, $82.50, right? And that's exactly how we solved it for. Now, how we're going to transfer this through into our inventory is going to be as follows, right? We're going to subtract 55 from the 100. We're going to use this like a math equation, right? We're going to do it directly under the amount that we're taking out of. In this case, I'm going to do 100 minus 55, and I'm going to get a total of 45. Same thing here. I had my total cost was 150. I minus my 82.50, and I get a total of 67.50. Okay. And then now that's going to be my new batch right here. So, any questions in regards to this? Right? We're just right here. I'm showing my work. I'm showing that I'm getting. I'm taking away from my first batch, and this is what I'm going to be ending up within my first batch is 45 left on hand. Okay. Now, of course, then the next thing happened was June 5th. You made another purchase of 100 toys for $1.28 with the freight cost of $26. So I've already solved it for you here. Now, again, we no longer have this 100 items anymore, right? It's now down to 45. So we're leaving that as batch number 1, and we're dealing with FIFO, okay? So now we're introduced to a second batch. So we're going to calculate this. So 100 items at $1.28 is going to give me 128 plus 26, which gives you 154. Okay. Then we're going to divide the unit. We're going to find the cost per item, which is going to be $1.54. And again, because now we have a second batch that were introduced, in order to not get it confused or to separate them, I'm going to choose another color. I'm going to highlight that batch so I know now we can apply the FIFO method, right? Because in the very beginning, we only had one batch, and one batch is all we can take out of. Now we can apply the first in, first out method, saying, okay, now I have batch number 1, and now I have batch number 2. Okay? And then on June 10th, you made another purchase of 100 toys for $1.30, and freight was $27. Okay, so I solved it here for you. And in this case, I recognize I have a third batch, and I've already highlighted it another color. Now, this is going to use a lot of brain power because you also want to make sure what colors you're using in what kind of order. Okay, so in this case, yellow is my first batch, red is my second batch, green is my third batch, okay? And then now, when we sell the next item, we're going to follow the FIFO method, which is we're going to start from top all the way making down to the bottom. So, on June 12th, you sold 120 items for $5 each, okay? So I've already solved it for you, but I'm going to show you how to do this. So, we sold 120 items, right? Let's look at our batch carefully. We're doing FIFO. So, the first batch that we're going to be taking out of is going to be our yellow batch. And then, after that, it's going to be our red batch. Okay? Okay. So, in this case, we recognize that 45 is going to be eliminated from the first batch, right? And then whatever it takes to get to 120 items sold is going to be 75, which is what we're going to be taking out of the red batch. So how we complete these transactions, so as we can see, here's our arrow saying we're taking from the first batch of the yellow. And then the second one, we're going to be taking our second batch, which is the red. So in this case, we know we're going to take away the entire batch of 45. So we can do the calculations, and it's going to get you to $67.50, which is the total amount that we have on hand. And we're going to subtract it out, and we're going to highlight that the yellow batch is gone. Okay? Now we're going to be dealing with the second batch of 75 at $1.54. So we're taking away from the red batch now, and we're going to go ahead and calculate that. And now my new red batch is for 25 because we took 75 out of 100. We're going to recognize that we only have 25 items left out of the red, and that is where we're at now. Okay, so now we only have our red batch and our green batch, which is still in our inventory, right? It's still green. Okay, we have not tampered it because it is, we're dealing with FIFO, which is first in, first out. So in this case, we were also recognized that at the end of the day, we need to have at least 125 items in ending inventory, and we do. It's right here. It's our red batch for 25 and our 100 batch of green. Here, we just calculated that we sold 120 items, and this was the total of selling the 120 items. Okay. And then down here, obviously, it's going to be your total cost of your cost of goods sold. You do not need to calculate that, okay? Because when we're at, I just want to give you an example here to show you at the end of the day, you just want to make sure that these match with your ledger at the end of the day. So you're going to be constantly looking at your ledger, and you're going to match that within the first half of June that you sold a total of 175 items. and that you have a total of 125 items left in inventory. And that is exactly what that last line is. Okay? It's just to verify. But in this case, here we still have our red and green badge. Okay? Any questions in regards to what we just saw?
I'm good.
Okay? I'm making it super simple, super easy for you guys to understand. And again, when we move into our exercises, I'm going to start off using the highlighting method. And if you don't like it, you don't need it. Okay? But yes, this is just, and then for your workspace, you don't even need to calculate any of these either. I'm just showing you where these numbers come from and where are we taking them out from. Okay, so in this case, this is our ending inventory, right? So now we're going to continue and have beginning inventory, all right? So this is going to be different. Instead of adding it in at the end of the day, we're going to just transfer it straight away into our inventory. So in this case, we'll just go ahead and go through it. So it says right here, June 15, you had a total of 125 toys on hand. So the first thing you do is you're going to transfer all that information into here. Okay? We recognize that the red batch came first, and then our green batch came second. And in this case, we've already we don't need to have the original cost or any of those things in there because we've already calculated it previously in the previous inventory worksheet. All we're transferring is how many items we have left and what's the total cost of them and what's the cost per item. Okay? So in this case, we have 25 of the red and we have 100 of the green. So we're transferring it immediately over here. Okay? So the next scenario that happens is that on June 18, you're going to sell 90 toys. Okay? So in this case, well, let's look at our inventory. We only have 25 in our first batch. And then we have 100 in the second batch. So in this case, we cannot take 90. We would have to split the cost of how to solve for the 90, right? We got to take 25 from the first, and then whatever it amounts to equal to 90 in the second batch. Okay? So in this case, we got 25 and we have 65. Okay? So 25 from the first, and we're going to take 65 from the second batch. All right? And here's a little indicator here that we're going to eliminate the first one. All right? And when we eliminate this 25, okay, we no longer have the red batch at all. We only have green left. Then we're going to go ahead and calculate our green batch, which was for $1.57. We're going to multiply it by the 65 because that's how much remaining we have of the 90 items we sold. And we're going to go ahead and multiply across. So we got 102.05 cents. And we're going to subtract that out from our green batch. And we're going to indicate that now my green batch is 35 items left. All right. And it's at a total of $54.95. Okay. So far, so good. And here we've calculated that we sold 90 items. And here's our grand total for selling those 90 items. Okay. Everyone good so far? Okay. Now the next scenario says is, wow, we made another purchase of 100 toys, but this time it's for $1.32 each and freight is 26. So now that we know we're going to be dealing with another batch of inventory, let's go ahead and solve for it. So another 100 items for $1.32 gives you 132. We're going to add the 26 to get you 158. And the cost per item is going to be $1.58. Now, this is where, I can choose, since my since my inventory worksheet right now, it looks clean. It's, I only have green left. I'm going to choose another color, and I'm going to choose blue. Okay. Now, when you actually on your inventory worksheet, it's going to be highlighted. That's fine. But I'm just showing you how to do step by step. Okay. So in this case, I recognize that my new batch is now going to be blue. And we're still following the rules of Fifo. Okay. Then on June 25th, you made another purchase of 100 toys for $1.35. Freight is $27. And in this case, I've already pre-calculated for you. And this time I chose orange. So I'm using every color that I can and making sure that I choose a color that doesn't look super similar. And because of the contrast that I'm using between them, right? You want to make sure that you're able to tell which is group 1, group 2, and group 3. So in this case, now that I'm looking at my inventory worksheet, my green batch is number 1. My blue batch is number 2, and my orange batch is number 3. Okay. And then now on June 27th, we sold another 120 toys. So let's look here. Do we have enough for 120? In this case, we do not. We need to take 35 from our first batch, and then we're going to take whatever 120 is minus 35, which should be, I think it's 85, and we're going to take that away from our blue batch. So in this case, yes, we recognize that we're going to take our green batch, our green batch, and we're going to minus it out. So now we no longer have our green batch anymore. Now we're going to calculate our second one for 85 for a 134.30, and we're going to take that out of our blue batch, and then now our blue batch is going to be 15 remaining at $23.70. Right? And here I calculated here, I have 120 at $189.25. Okay? Now the last thing that happened on the 28th is you sold 65 more toys. And then lastly, we also want to recognize that on our inventory on hand, right, is going to be 50 toys. So in this case, we recognize that we need to minus our blue batch because that came first before the orange, right? So we need to get rid of the blue batch. And then lastly, we take away from our orange batch. So in this case, we're taking 50 from our orange, and we're taking 15 away from the original blue batch. So in this case, I'm going to calculate that. Oops, let me go back. So I'm going to calculate that out. So here, it's calculated, 15, you minus the 15, boom, it's eliminated. Then we're going to calculate for our orange, and we find this number, and we're going to subtract it from our table to get a new ending inventory of 50 items left, costing a total of $81 even. Okay, and here we've also added up what we sold, which was 65 toys, and it cost us a total of $104. So on the left side here with our little labels here, we're doing calculations because ultimately at the end of the day, the question is we sold this many. Well, how much did it cost you? So here I'm just tallying them up. Okay. Here in this one, the light blue ones, it's just basically the etch marks of where you actually made a calculation of where the new inventory lies. But we're using the highlighting process, and we recognize that we only have the orange batch left. Okay. Any questions in how I solved for this thing, I guess, whatever you want to call it. Okay. This is a little more complicated because you have to be careful on where to go, and you also have to be careful of which batch you're taking out from. So this can be very confusing because now you're constantly going back and forth. Now, a little shortcut or a little method. rule of thumb, you're always going to move from left to right. Okay, so you're going to deal with your cost of goods sold, your inventory worksheet, and then your inventory on hand. And what I mean about that is figure it this way. Okay, so in the very beginning, I had beginning inventory. So did it involve with my cost of goods sold? No, so I can skip and move on to the middle. Do I have beginning inventory? Yes, I do. I put it in the middle and then I transfer it over into my inventory on hand. So you're going to move from left to right. Okay, in this case, I sold something. I got to immediately put it into my cost of goods sold. I'm going to transfer that into my workspace to get my new calculation. And once I do that, I'm going to transfer that over onto my inventory on hand to reflect the total amount that I have. Okay? All right, and we'll look into it tomorrow. All right? Other than that, is there any extra questions that you guys have in regards to chapter 8.1?
No, ma'am, not for me.
Okay. All right. I definitely want to save the exercise for tomorrow.